happening? Thanks for joining me on this Friday. It is very much appreciated. Hopefully all of you are getting ready to have a fantastic weekend. I know I am. I got the Royal Rumble tomorrow night as a wrestling fan. Going to go out with Kelly, my wife, tonight, have some drinks, visit some family as well. Should be a fantastic weekend. But before I get to weekend business, I need to get to this business because there's a lot going on with the Patriots right now. So much news flooding in over the past 24, 36 hours. News, rumors, notes, everything, reports, a bunch of stuff. Let's start with Tee Higgins. It is 100% possible that Tee Higgins stays in Cincinnati. It is absolutely possible that he will stay a Bengal. He'll be happy with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, and he will just stay where he is, not hitting free agency. It's possible. You got the Joe Burrow influence down there, right? But I've been saying from day one, as soon as Tee Higgins started to talk about staying and Joe Burrow came out, talked about Higgins staying and keeping things together, and Higgins changed his agent, and people were trying to create something as if a deal was going to get done just like that. And I've been saying now for the past few months, I will see it. I will believe it rather when I see it. That's how it works. I'll believe it when I see it. If Higgins stays in Cincinnati, I would be very surprised. Very surprised. And this week, you've got the Senior Bowl. A lot of people down in Mobile, Alabama. A lot of coaches, a lot of GMs, a lot of people talking, right? Lots of talk going on. And here is the latest on Higgins from Cincinnati. This was transcribed by Pro Football Talk. Higgins played out the year on the franchise tag. Chase did not sign an extension. So Cincinnati is heading into the offseason facing the same kinds of questions. Can they get one or both of these guys signed? Director of Player Personnel in Cincinnati is Duke Tobin. Duke said from the Senior Bowl on Wednesday that, quote, it's going to be hard, unquote, to find agreements, quote, that make sense for everybody, unquote. It's going to be hard to find agreements that make sense for everybody. What's that sound like to you? That sounds like to me that the director of player personnel in Cincinnati is asking Tee Higgins for a discount. Sounds like he's already asking. He's already putting this out there for the fans. It's going to be hard for us to come to an agreement that makes sense for everybody. Like, T, you want $35 million a year. That makes a lot of sense for you. Doesn't make a lot of sense for us. Tobin said on Wednesday that getting Jamar Chase's deal done is a priority. A priority. We got to get Jamar Chase done first and foremost. That's the most important receiver on our football team, not Tee Higgins. Again, what is the message being sent by the director of player personnel? It's going to be very hard to find agreements that make sense for everybody. Meanwhile, I want all of you to know that Jamar Chase is our number one priority this offseason. He also discussed defensive end Trey Hendrickson earning a pay raise. Here's what Tobin said. I've always been very upfront in my desire to have Tee Higgins on our team. I've never not been upfront about that. And that desire continues, but we have to. There's the but we have to be able to come together with his representation on what that means and what the right number is for his experience, for his play time, for his production. All right, so let's read between the lines here, right? Tobin tells us it's going to be very difficult to make everybody happy. He tells us that Jamar Chase is the number one priority, and he also tells us that Trey Hendrickson deserves a raise. When he talks about Tee Higgins, what does he talk about? He talks about Tee Higgins' experience, his play time. What do you think he's getting to when he talks playing time? He's talking injuries and his production. So it's pretty easy to read what Duke Tobin had to say and figure out what's happening here. Yes, we will sign Tee Higgins to a contract extension if he realizes that he hasn't always been healthy, that he is the number 2 wide receiver on our football team, and if he's willing to take a discount. That's what Duke Tobin is saying. If Tee Higgins is going to stay in Cincinnati, it's because Tee Higgins wants to stay in Cincinnati. He's going to take less money, and he's going to understand that he will never be the number 1 wide receiver on the football team. Tobin said, let's find something that works for everybody because he is a guy that we want to have here, and hopefully that can come together. Again, hopefully, But we have other guys who are trying to take big bites of the apple in other areas, and we're going to have to balance those as we go forward. We got to balance the spreadsheet, baby. We got to make sure that we're not paying everybody at the tip top of the market, right? If I'm going to pay Jamar Chase what he's going to make, which is going to be probably at least the same, if not more money than Justin Jefferson, and if I'm going to pay Trey Hendrickson at the top of the defensive end market, then I'm not going to be able to pay Tee Higgins the money that he wants to be paid. It's as simple as that. That's what Duke Tobin is telling everybody. I would love to have the guy, but he's going to have to realize that. This is going to have to be a deal between us. It's not going to have to be a situation where he walks into the room, wants to get paid as a top 5 wide receiver, and we just back up the Brinks truck. That's not going to happen. And that's why I've been saying for the last couple of months, I believe, and look, I could end up being wrong. I've been wrong before. I will be wrong again. And I will be fine to accept the fact that I am wrong on certain things. I'm okay with it. It's part of the deal. It's part of the business. But I've been saying for the last couple of months, Tee Higgins is going to walk into free agency. It would be insane if he did not walk into free agency. He is the best available wide receiver on the market. It would be nuts. It would be irresponsible. It would be downright terrible management from his representation, his new representation, if they did not go to market. You got the top wide receiver in the marketplace, and you're not going to bring him to that market. That'd be bananas. It makes no sense. It doesn't make any sense for the agent. It doesn't make any sense for Tee Higgins, unless he wants to take less money and maybe even significantly less money to stay in Cincinnati. That's what I've been preaching for the last couple of months, right? Mike Brown, who runs the ship in Cincinnati, right? He keeps an eye on the wallet. He's got those purse strings tight. Mike Brown's reputation is that he does not spend a ton of money. So do we expect Mike Brown, who has never spent a lot of money, do we expect Mike Brown to give the okay, give the thumbs up, to sign Jamar Chase to one of the most richest contracts in NFL history at the wide receiver position, to pay Trey Hendrickson at the top of the defensive edge market, and to pay Tee Higgins a top 10 wide receiver contract? Why would we ever expect that? Why should we ever anticipate that? That one of the cheapest owners, arguably the cheapest owner, and I know there's craft jokes there, I get it, but one of the cheapest owners in all of football is going to pay not one, not two, but 3 guys at the top of the market. It's hard to believe. And Cincinnati, from a football decision-making process, would you rather have 2 wide receivers, or would you rather have Jamar Chase and your best defensive player? Because I don't think they're going to pay all 3 at the top of the market. So in essence, it's Hendrickson versus Higgins. And Cincinnati, they need Hendrickson. To me, Tee Higgins is an embarrassment of riches. Tee Higgins is somebody that you're fortunate to have. He's a luxury to have. But is he really a necessity? Yoshi Voss is there. He's developing. Is Tee Higgins a necessity? Are you going to pay a guy $30 to $35 million a year when you don't absolutely need that guy? Tough for me to believe, especially with that owner in that market. Tough for me to believe. I think they're going to pay Jamar Chase a lot of money. I think they're going to pay Trey Hendrickson a lot of money. And Tee Higgins is going to price himself out of Cincinnati. The next question is, does that mean Tee Higgins is on his way to New England? We'll get to that in a minute. But before I get to that, don't forget, you can help us out a number of different ways. You don't have to pay any money, right? Doesn't take a lot of your time. You can click that thumbs up button as you watch us on YouTube. All of you have been doing such a tremendous job supporting this program by clicking that thumbs up. Those likes help us with the algorithm. So don't forget to like the product. Don't forget to throw a comment in as well. Do you think Tee Higgins is going to stay in Cincinnati? Do you think Cincinnati is going to be willing to pay him and Jamar Chase and Trey Hendrickson what all 3 of those guys want so they stay in Cincinnati? Do you think that Joe Burrow has enough? Do you think Joe Burrow has enough stroke in Cincinnati to keep Chase and Higgins? Do you think that's going to happen? Don't forget to like, don't forget to comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Try and hit 6,000 subscriptions. We are now less than 250 away from our 6,000 subscriber goal. We got about a month and a half to hit that. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Spotify is blowing up. Spotify videos blowing up. Thanks to all of you who watch us on Spotify or listen to us on Spotify. Apple Pods numbers are increasing. It's all because of your support. I don't overlook it. I appreciate it every single day. So let's keep on pushing forward. Like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review. All right. Is Tee Higgins headed to New England? Is he Patriots bound? Chad Graff of The Athletic wrote this week. The Chargers will probably be one of the challengers for Higgins, and don't rule out a return to the Bengals. Again, I would not totally rule it out. I think it's possible, but I think it's improbable. Graff writes, but the guess. Now we got to underline that. This is Chad Graff's guess. The guess is that the Patriots won't be outbid for Higgins. Maybe he takes a hometown discount, or maybe the allure of Los Angeles and Justin Herbert win out. But at this point, Graff writes, I think the Patriots land Higgins to begin a transformation of their offense. So Graff says that he believes, again, this is not a report, this is not intel, but he says he believes that Tee Higgins will end up in New England. That Cincinnati, they can't pay him what he's going to want to be paid. Higgins is not going to take that hometown discount. The Patriots are going to run into the negotiating room with a bag of money, drop it in front of Tee Higgins and say, help us change this offense. I 100% believe that the Patriots are going to back up the Brinks truck for Tee Higgins. I 100% believe that. Why? Because they offered a lot of money to Calvin Ridley last year before he decided to go to Tennessee, and because they offered Brandon Ayuk $90 million guaranteed on top of trading a draft pick in Kendrick Bourne. So we know from last offseason that the Patriots were desperate for a wide receiver one. They were desperate for an ex-receiver. They tried Ridley. That did not work. They put it all out there for Ayuk, and Ayuk said thanks, but no thanks. So I believe the Patriots are going to go after Tee Higgins because he's the best wide receiver available on the market, because they went after two of the best receivers that were available on the market last offseason. And the Patriots obviously have a lot of cap space, and they need to spend money up to 90% of the cap over a 3-year period. So they've got to pour some money out there. I absolutely believe that the Patriots will give everything they've got to try to sign Tee Higgins, to try to get that position of need, that ex-receiver. Now, I know some people might say he's not a wide receiver one. We don't know. I mean, that's the truth, right? We've never seen Tee Higgins in the NFL being asked to be the number one guy. We've never seen it. Jamar Chase has been there, right? He hasn't had a chance to develop into that wide receiver one. You can look at his numbers and you could say, well, if you extrapolate his numbers, he's absolutely going to be a number one guy. But, how much is he impacted by having Joe Burrow at quarterback and Jamar Chase along with him in the offense? It's a legitimate question. But here's the thing. Does it matter? Is Tee Higgins not your best wide receiver day one when he walks into the facility? Of course he is. So whether he's a 1B or a 2A or a 1A, he's still going to be your best wide receiver that you have on this football team. And he is still going to be a big-bodied ex-receiver who can make plays down the field. Think about what Mike Vrabel talked about when he talked about wide receivers, right? He talked about guys who can make contested catches, guys that can separate, guys that have a big catch radius. Higgins can make those kinds of catches downfield. So I would have to imagine Mike Vrabel likes himself some Tee Higgins. I would have to imagine that. So you add it all up, it just makes sense. He just turned 26 years old. So you still have, 4 or 5 really good years left. So he's young enough. He has been productive enough. And for people that say he gets injured, I understand. But again, you can only get what you can get, right? Tee Higgins costs you money. If you want to try to go out and get a DK Metcalf, he's going to cost you a lot of money, and he's going to cost you valuable picks. So Tee Higgins, yeah, he's been banged up from time to time. But when he's played, he's been unbelievably productive. And he's just going to cost you money. He's not costing you assets. I think it makes too much sense. Now, do I think Tee Higgins will be a Patriot? I lean towards no. I think there's a chance. I think there's a bona fide chance because of the money and because of the need and the fact that the Patriots know they've got to go all in on him. So I do give them a chance. But I would lean towards LA. I would lean towards the Chargers. I don't know how much I buy that Commanders talk because they got to settle Terry McLaurin's contract. I know I heard about the 49ers. I don't know why the 49ers would bring Higgins in. I mean, maybe, but you already have Ayuk coming back from ACL, and you've got Ricky Pearsall. You've got Debo out there. You've got George Kittle. To me, that's kind of, again, the embarrassment of riches. It feels like to me that those teams being thrown out could end up being agent talk. The teams that make the most sense, and maybe I'll be wrong again, right? I might be wrong, but the teams that make the most sense are the teams that have that need. The Chargers. You can put Tee Higgins with Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey slides down to your 2. Tee Higgins is your number 1 guy. He's the outside receiver. McConkey's the guy you move around. That makes a lot of sense. Tee Higgins staying in Cincinnati makes a lot of sense. Tee Higgins coming to New England to be the man and get paid a huge bag makes sense. The Niners and the Commanders, less so. Not impossible, but less so. So I'm looking at the Patriots, the Chargers, and the Bengals as the 3 teams that I think make the most sense for Higgins. But the state tax is real. We talked about it with Calvin Ridley last year. I stand by that. The Massachusetts state tax is real. Millionaire's tax is real. It's a problem. The Chargers have more than $60 million in cap space, so they're going to be able and capable of paying Higgins what he wants. Of course, when we talk about professional sports, we talk about location. And LA is a lot sexier to professional athletes than Massachusetts is. So you've got to battle the location. So I would put the Chargers in the lead here. If I were to rank the teams right now, I honestly would have it the Chargers 1, the Patriots 2, and the Bengals 3. Because of the location, because of the market, because of the money the Chargers have, the fact that you have Justin Herbert, who has not been very good in the playoffs, as we know, but he is a known quantity, a proven quarterback in the regular season. You've got a really good offensive line with 2 stud tackles. You've got McConkey to take some of the heat off of you. And if you join the Chargers with Jim Harbaugh, you know you have a serious opportunity of making a playoff run. So that's how I would handicap the field. I would put it Chargers 1, Patriots 2, Bengals 3. All right. What's the latest on the draft? We got to talk about the draft. Man, oh man, a lot going on, right? A lot going on. As we know, the Patriots have the 4th pick in the draft. 4th pick in the draft. Now, the $1 million question for all of us is how many quarterbacks will be selected in the top 3? That's the ultimate question. Because if you have Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders both taken in the top 3, then we know the Patriots are guaranteed an opportunity to draft either Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. So the biggest question right now is about the quarterbacks and how many of those guys could end up going at the tippity top of the draft. Brett Coleman posted last Saturday from the East-West Shrine practices the following. So the top 3 teams in the draft all met with Sanders for like an hour yesterday. And then today, the following day, he didn't practice. Coleman tweets out, I'll let you all do the math on that one. So Shedeur Sanders goes to the East-West Shrine game and the practices. He was not going to play, but he goes to the East-West Shrine practices. He ends up meeting with Tennessee, Cleveland, and the Giants. He spends at least an hour, around an hour, with each of those 3 teams individually. And then he didn't practice after those meetings. What's that tell you? That would lead you to believe that Shedeur Sanders got a promise from one of those 3 teams, or at least felt good enough about how those conversations went that he felt, I don't need to practice because one of those 3 teams is going to pick me. Tony Pauline from Sportskeeda, he wrote this about the quarterback talk this week at the Senior Bowl. The overwhelming belief here is that Cam Ward will be the first quarterback taken. Taking it one step further, people believe if the draft were held today, Ward would be selected by the Titans. So Tony Pauline is reporting that those at the Senior Bowl practices this week believe that Cam Ward is going to go ahead of Shedeur Sanders, which is not a surprise. We've heard that. But Pauline also says, from what he has heard, the Titans would pick Cam Ward at number 1. More from Pauline. Ward's rise up draft boards is similar to that of Jaden Daniels. Ward entered the season as a day 3 prospect, as did Daniels, and is now primed to be a top 3 selection at worst. As far as Shedeur Sanders, here's what Pauline writes. The elder Sanders, talking about Neon Dion, has said in the past that he will be influential as to which franchises he wants and does not want his son, as well as Travis Hunter, to play for as rookies. It is the opinion, Pauline writes, and I stress opinion, that Dion would likely cross Cleveland off the list. Such a move would mean Shedeur would be available at 3 for the Giants. So Tony Pauline, let's put all the information together. Brett Coleman says that at the East-West Shrine practices, Shedeur Sanders meets with all 3 teams at the top of the draft. He spends almost an hour, if not more, in every single one of those individual meetings. He then shuts down. He doesn't practice. Then we hear from Tony Pauline that Cam Ward is going to be drafted in the top 3. And if the draft was today, he would be drafted by Tennessee. He also mentions that Shedeur Sanders is likely not to go to Cleveland because Dion might cross the Browns off the list, which would leave Sanders at number 3 for the Giants. And then Ian Rappaport last night reported that the Browns and the Giants are both likely taking a quarterback. Didn't say the Titans. But all the information over the past 6 days, from Coleman to Pauline to Rappaport, all of that information takes us down one path. Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders are going to be drafted in the top 3. If you believe what's being reported, those 2 quarterbacks will be gone by the time the Patriots are on the board. And the only thing that matters is if that's true. If those 2 quarterbacks are off the board. If those 2 quarterbacks are not off the board, it's also not the worst possible situation for the Patriots either, because if you have one of Sanders or Cam Ward on the board, now you can take phone calls, and any team that wants to trade up to number 4 can trade up, depending on if you want to drop far down or how far down you want to drop, right? So if you read all the reports, if you hear everything that's being said right now, everything is pointing towards 2 quarterbacks going in the top 3. There's a warning. It's early, right? The final day of January. We still have just under 3 months to go before the draft hits. A lot of these things can change. You've got more interviews. You've got pro days. You've got the combine. You've got a lot of different things. Our team's going to trade within the first round. So it's still early. There's no guarantees. If you want my opinion, which is why you come here, I would tell you I believe that both quarterbacks will go in the top 3. It is a quarterback league. You're not always in the top 3. We talked about this last year with the Patriots and Drake May in the quarterback field. You don't always have the opportunity to be in the top 3 to select a future franchise quarterback. If you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a great football team unless you somehow find a way to fill it with a bunch of weapons offensively and defensively, like San Francisco and Philly has done. That's very difficult to pull off. The easiest way to compete is to get the guy at quarterback. And it's my experience doing more than 15 years of radio that the quarterback chatter usually gets more hot as time goes on instead of cooling off. So I think as we hear about Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders right now going in the top 3, I think that's only going to build momentum. And I think somebody like Jackson Dart, by the time we get to the draft, I would not be surprised if Jackson Dart's being mentioned as a guy who's going to go in the top 10 or top 15. That's how this works. So I think Ward and Sanders will both be gone in the top 3, which makes you wonder, what does Tennessee do? If Tennessee doesn't draft a quarterback, do they draft Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter at number 1? If they draft Carter, then Travis Hunter could actually be sitting there for you at number 4. How would you feel about that? Would you draft Travis Hunter at number 4 if he fell to you? Throw a comment in. Let me know. And while you're watching, listening, don't forget to click that thumbs up button, like the podcast, and don't forget to subscribe. We're now under 250 subscribers away from our goal of 6,000 by free agency, which is technically March 10th when the tampering period begins. So we got about a month or so, about 5 weeks, 6 weeks left before we hit that time. Don't forget to subscribe so we can get to 6,000. All right, so would I draft Travis Hunter at number 4? I released a podcast going back maybe a couple months ago saying at that time, again, it's all fluid, that I would draft Travis Hunter number 1. But the one thing I said, and that was if you couldn't trade down and a bunch of other things, right? But what I said at the time is it depends on if Travis Hunter is going to be a cornerback or a wide receiver. That means something to me. I need to know if Hunter is going to be the primary cornerback or one of your primary receivers. He's not going to play Iron Man football in the NFL. He's not going to play 95% of the snaps on both sides. It's not going to happen. So I need some clarification as to what is Travis Hunter in the NFL? Does he want to be a cornerback? Does he want to be a wide receiver? Is he open to allowing the team to make that decision? Right now, we don't have a clear answer. Now, Evan Lazar at Patriots.com wrote the following. He said down in Mobile, one of his takeaways, although the majority says Hunter is a corner, there is a camp that believes he's a better wide receiver. Lazar writes, in other words, I wouldn't say it's corner or bust for Hunter in the NFL. And then Lazar writes, as part of his takeaway, the following. The Patriots might consider drafting Hunter as a wide receiver. So from what Lazar heard in Mobile, it's not cornerback or bust for Travis Hunter. That's still a question that needs to be answered, but some teams in the league feel like he would be a better receiver than a corner. And then Lazar adds that the Patriots might consider drafting Hunter as a wide receiver. I think for the Patriots, Hunter brings much more impact as a wide receiver. You already have Christian Gonzalez, right? Are you at a position in your life, football-wise, with this roster, that you can have 2 premier corners when you have so many other holes? I think for Hunter to make sense for the Patriots at 4, wide receiver makes a lot more sense to me than cornerback. And if Hunter's going to be a, 85, 90%, 95% snap guy at wide receiver, and then he's going to sprinkle in some plays at cornerback, that would make more sense to me if I'm the Patriots. Now, for Hunter, does it make more sense to play corner? I think it's easier to play, 95% of the time at corner and 5% at receiver. I think that's easier for the football player. So Hunter is not just this clear choice because we don't really know what he wants to do. We don't know how much he's going to try to play the game, right? Is he going to be hard to get along with if you don't put him at the position he wants to play? Is Dion going to be involved? There's a lot of different pieces with Travis Hunter. And so I wonder if Hunter wants to play cornerback, if you're the Patriots, you've got to take calls, right? I want to know what kind of offer is on the table for Travis Hunter if he wants to play corner. If I have Christian Gonzalez, I don't want necessarily to spend a top 4 pick on another corner because I have a lot of other things I have to address with this football team. So, but it's difficult because Hunter is a blue chip prospect, and there's not many blue chip prospects in this draft. I heard Jim Nagy the other day, the guy who runs the Senior Bowl, he said that some teams in the NFL have only 10 first-round grades. Only 10 first-round grades. So this is not a draft that is full of blue-chip prospects. Hunter is absolutely one of those guys. So it's very difficult to say no to Travis Hunter, but knowing that he is one of those blue-chip guys, what kind of offer would be on the table for you? Tough choice, right? If somebody's going to knock you over with a deal, it's, do I take a great trade offer and move down some spots, or do I draft the blue chip guy who wants to possibly play cornerback, and now I've got 2 top cornerbacks, but I still have left tackle to figure out. I still have wide receiver 1 to figure out. I still have right tackle to figure out. I still have defensive end to figure out. And what the Patriots front office has to figure out, right? Vrabel, and Cowden and Wolf, they've got to figure out how much difference there is between Hunter and the other guys. If you're Mike Vrabel and you don't think there's a big difference between Will Campbell and Travis Hunter, or I don't know, player X, Mason Graham, or Hunter, right? If you don't think there's a significant difference between those two players, then I think you make the trade. But if you think Travis Hunter is head and shoulders above Mason Graham, Will Campbell, Will Johnson, any other name you want to bring up, right? If you feel like Hunter is above and beyond all of those guys, then it makes it very, very tough to make that trade because there's not really anybody else that is of that class. People will tell you that it's like Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, and then pretty much everybody else in their own tiers. So it makes it very difficult. Right now, what I would say, right now, this is all fluid. As I said a couple months ago when I said I would take Hunter number 1, I said it was all fluid. Need to know where he wants to play and how this all unfolds. Right now, if Hunter is a cornerback first, if I am overwhelmed by an offer, if I get a really good offer, I'm taking the trade. It's January 31st. Right now, gun to my head, that's what I would do. If Travis Hunter is going to be a corner, I'm making that trade. I'm dropping back. I'm getting draft assets, and I start filling these holes with quality football players. All right, I got more. Joe Milton. Is Joe Milton going to be traded? Should the Patriots trade Joe Milton? I'll get to that. But first, we got a $50 super chat on a Friday from Backyard Cyclist. Thank you, Backyard. So sorry I have not caught you live, Nick. Been currently uprooting my life to San Antonio. Never forget, I never miss your podcast. Keep doing you, friend. Cheers. Thank you, Backyard Cyclist. I appreciate that. I wish you luck in your move. I'm sure you will still be here with us, even from down in San Antonio. It's quite a move from Massachusetts to Texas. I mean, I've done some moves in my day, Virginia Beach, California. So I know the deal. Moving is a pain in the ass. But hopefully you get the move done. Everything's good. You get your feet on solid ground, and you're down there in San Antonio. So good luck with the move. Thank you for the kind words, and especially thank you for the $50 super chat. Backyard means a lot to me. David Colburn with the 5. Neon Dion player equals locker room cancer. No thanks. Carter or top tackle, maybe wide receiver. I'm not on the wide receiver thing right now. I don't want Tet McMillan at 4. I don't think Tet McMillan's a top 5 player in a draft. I think you'd be reaching for Tet McMillan. We'll see how Will Campbell's catching my eye more and more. The more I read about him, the more I, watch. Will Campbell's starting to creep up. Starting to give me the feels a little bit. Again, it's January 31st. Things can change. But right now, I'm not big on the Tet McMillan wide receiver route at number 4. I'm just not. I think that would be a bit of a reach. But I thank you for the 5, David. It is very much appreciated. All right, let's get to Joe Milton. So Joe Milton, we all know how the year ended against the backups of Buffalo. Seemed like he developed very well. A lot of people were talking about Joe Milton after that game. And this week down in Mobile was very interesting because Brian Baldinger of the NFL Network said that after getting a look at this year's crop, Milton could be a useful chip if the team wants to make a trade. Here's what Baldinger told SI, quote, after watching some of these guys at the Senior Bowl, I might think Joe Milton is my very best option if I'm looking for a quarterback right now. You might just be doing some backflips if you pull the string and negotiate with the Patriots for his services, unquote. So Baldinger comes out, he tells SI, hey, the way these quarterbacks look in Mobile, if I'm a team, I might be picking up the phone trying to acquire Joe Milton. Greg Bedard wrote about Milton at Boston Sports Journal. Here's what Bedard wrote. There's increasing belief around the NFL that the Patriots are at least contemplating a trade. Again, I'm not saying he's on the block right now, but the Patriots will likely consider it when everything settles with the front office and coaching staff. This is the key part. This is the key part to me. Bedard writes that some league executives believe the Patriots could get up to a 3rd-round pick this year for Joe Milton. So some league executives believe that you could get a 3rd-round pick for Joe Milton. If I could get a third-round pick for Joe Milton, I am 100% pulling the freaking trigger. I am taking that deal, and I am running with that deal. When you look at this draft, what many people are writing, what many people are seeing, what I am researching is that in this draft, you've got really the first top 10 to 15 guys. But once you get to like 20, the next 50 picks or so are going to be a lot of the same guy. There's a lot of similarities as far as you look at, talent and value. Let's just say, because it's easier to say, from 25 to 75 is a lot of the same kind of guy. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right? But there's a lot of depth from 25 to 75. Like, you could get yourself a really solid football player in the middle of the third round this year. You might even be able to get yourself a really solid football player in the fourth round. Now, I know guys go every year. Puka Nacua. We could sit here and rattle off. I'm just saying it's more likely this year than in past years that you can find impact football players that can contribute to your football team in 2025. You can find those guys in the fourth round this year much more likely than you could in last year's draft. So if you're looking at that pick 25 to 75 sweet spot, I love that for the Patriots, right? Because right now the Patriots, they have the 4th pick, the 36th pick, the 69th pick, and the 77th pick. They have 4 picks in the top 77. Again, you got a top 5 pick, and then you have 3 other picks between 25 and 75, the sweet spot of this draft. Patriots already have 3 of those picks in that sweet spot. I know 77 is more than 75. I get it, but you get the point. If you're getting a third-round pick for Joe Milton, I have to believe that the team trading that third-round pick to you is a desperate football team. They're a team that needs a quarterback. That's why you would trade a third-round pick for Joe Milton, because you need a quarterback. Teams that need a quarterback are in the top 10. So it's possible that this third-round pick that you get for Joe Milton, if it was offered to you, would be in the top half of the third round. So now, if that is the case, you have 5. You have 5 picks in the top 77. You have 4 picks in that sweet spot from 25 to 75. That's a tremendous opportunity. 5 picks in the top 77, just call it 75. You have so many options. You've got a lot of holes on this team, right? A lot of holes in this boat that you got to plug. You got a lot of holes in the boat. If you've got 5 picks in the top 75, give or take a pick, top 77. If you've got 5 picks before you hit pick 80, man, you've got tons of things you can do. You can trade up, you can trade down, you can stick and pick. And this year, with that sweet spot, 25 to 75, you could be sitting there with all of those picks in hand. You can have 4 picks in that sweet spot, and now you can do whatever you want with those picks. You can use some of those picks to move back into the first round. You can use some of those picks to have 2 picks in the second round. There's so much versatility and flexibility to your draft if you can have that. To take a 6th-round pick in Joe Milton, who played 1 single solitary football game in his rookie season, to take that guy and get a 3rd-round pick for him, to me, would be unbelievable. Unbelievable. Drake May is your franchise quarterback, folks. Joe Milton's not your franchise quarterback. Drake May is going to be the starting quarterback for this football team for the next, if things work out, 10 years, 12 years. In a perfect world, Joe Milton never sees the field. If you can get a 3rd-round pick for a guy who might never see the field, you do that every day of the week. You absolutely make that trade. I would not think twice about it. That is a no-brainer to me. And let's not forget that Milton is 25 years old. We're not talking about somebody who's, 21, 22. He's 25 years old. This might be the best Joe Milton will ever be. This right here might be his ceiling. That might be it. played a lot of college football. What we saw from Milton against the Buffalo backups might be the best you're going to get, which, hey, might end up being a starting quarterback. Who knows? But are you willing to hold on and take that risk and say, no, we're going to keep him? We're going to keep him behind Drake May as our backup quarterback instead of taking a third-round pick? I would absolutely make that move. I would not think twice about it. I would do it in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. That would be a tremendous, tremendous asset to get for a guy you picked in the 6th round. All right, we got coaching notes. I want to close today's podcast with some coaching notes. We've gone through some free agency. We've gone through some draft. We went through the trade or the possible trade of Joe Milton. Let's finish with some coaching notes. So Ben McAdoo has been retained. What did Ben McAdoo do this past season? By the way, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Support a brother. Help us out. Let's continue to build this community. So we did a podcast going back, I don't know, a couple months ago, I think. It was Mark Daniels who did a fantastic piece on Ben McAdoo and what his responsibilities were for the Patriots. And McAdoo, we talk about Joe Milton. McAdoo is responsible for Joe Milton. A lot of us, we'll hear people say, oh, well, Alex Van Pelt did a great job with Drake May and Joe Milton. Not necessarily both. T.C. McCartney, Van Pelt, they worked with May and Brissett. McAdoo took care of Joe Milton. When those other two quarterbacks were working with McCartney and Van Pelt, Milton was off into a corner working with McAdoo, and McAdoo was drilling him through fundamentals. So McAdoo is responsible for any development that Milton had over this past season. So that's one of his primary jobs with the Patriots. He also helped with situational game planning. He ran the scout defense on Thursdays. So I'm okay with keeping McAdoo. Don't know what his role is going to be. I think you keep McAdoo because if you keep Milton, then he can work with Milton and continue to develop Joe Milton. If you don't keep Milton and you bring in another draft pick, McAdoo can work with that other draft pick to help develop him. McAdoo obviously has some history with Drake May. He's been around him. So that's good. Some continuity. And here's another thing. The Patriots now have 4 guys on their offensive staff that have either been head coach or interim head coach in the NFL. 4. You want to talk about experience? You want to talk about brains? You've got McAdoo. You've got Thomas Brown. You've got Josh McDaniels. And you've got Doug Marrone. You now have 4 guys on your offensive staff that at one point or time was a head coach or an interim head coach in the NFL. To go along with your head coach, Mike Vrabel. It's a lot of experience on this staff. A lot of experience. So I'm cool with keeping McAdoo. Got no problem with him. We'll see what his official title is. Patriots also hiring Justin Hamilton. This came out yesterday. He was the Virginia Tech defensive coordinator and safeties coach in 2020, 2021. He was a defensive quality control coach for the Tennessee Titans in 2023. So, yes, he worked with Mike Vrabel in 2023. He was the assistant defensive backs coach this past year, 2024, in Indianapolis. I don't know if he's going to be the direct replacement of Mike Pellegrino, but Justin Hamilton is brought in. So now you've got 3 guys on this coaching staff that we know have experience working with secondary. Scott Booker, who has been primarily a safeties coach. Kevin Richardson II, who's been, I think, an assistant defensive backs coach in college. And then Hamilton, who has been an assistant defensive backs coach most recently in Indy this past year. So you've got Booker, Richardson, and Hamilton. My guess, and this is just a guess, my guess is that Scott Booker will be your safeties coach. Justin Hamilton will be your defensive backs coach. And my guess is that Kevin Richardson II will be the assistant defensive backs coach to help Hamilton. That's how I think your secondary coaching mix ends up being, when we kick off the season in September. I think Booker will be safeties. I think Richardson the second will be cornerbacks, defensive backs, and I think or assistant defensive backs, and Hamilton will be your defensive backs coach. That's what I think will happen with the coaching staff. All right, we had an absolutely loaded podcast today. Hopefully all of you enjoyed it on a Friday. We talked free agency with Tee Higgins. We talked draft, Travis Hunter. We talked Joe Milton, possible trade. We gave you the latest on the coaching staff. Still no wide receivers coach. I think the Patriots are waiting. I don't know if they're waiting for somebody to be out of contract. I don't know if they're trying to get somebody out of a contract. Chad O'Shea would be interesting. I don't know if they're trying to work with another team to bring somebody over and maybe promote that person and give them some kind of title. But I would have to imagine that this is taking longer than a lot of us thought to name a wide receivers coach because something is at play. I would imagine they want somebody from somewhere else that might be contractually obligated, and they're trying to work it out. I could be wrong. They could just be doing a ton of interviews, but still no wide receivers coach. All right. Enjoy your weekend. Have a great Friday night. I'm going to have a fun weekend. If anything breaks that's big, we'll be all about it. If not, we'll be back on Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern right here on YouTube. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Help this show out. Drive that algorithm. Appreciate you. Nick Cowdle Show. See you on Monday.